Hello, this is Brian Purdy with the Florida Aviation Network, live and in clear from Sun and Fun Aerospace Expo 2025. We're visiting with Tanner Landon of Meso Tech, another exhibitor here at the Innovation Showcase. And we want to invite you all to come on down and take a look at their products and all the other ones here. So good morning, Tanner. How is Sun and Fun for you so far?
It's going good. Thanks for the intro, Brian, and excited to chat with you today about our AWAS. Sun and Fun's great. First time here. It's an awesome show. More, going on than I expected. Got to see the night show and excited for the next one coming up tomorrow night.
Okay, great. It is quite an interesting show, especially when the weather is good and everything, and you get the right seat. Okay, so MesoTech has been around for a while. I think you said like 30 years. Tell us a little bit about what they do and the offering we're showing off at the Innovation Showcase.
Yeah, I'll give the quick history lesson. We've been around for over 30 years, started building meteorological systems for ag and all sorts of different use cases. Then we transitioned into supporting the DoD, specifically the U.S. Air Force, for their weather monitoring needs. We've had multiple contracts with the U.S. Air Force, and now we're the sole source weather provider for the U.S. Air Force for all fixed-base weather systems globally. In 2021, we took that same technology and got it FAA certified so that airports throughout the country can use it for their flight planning and operations and have FAA certified weather at airports that they frequent.
Now, since they're adding so much more, fortunately every registered airport has a three-letter identifier. Have you actually had somebody wanting to put just something out on their property that doesn't have an identifier that you can differentiate it from?
Most of the work that we're doing is retrofits, existing AWAS systems that have aged out. The lifespan's about 20 years on these systems, and a lot of them got installed about 20 years ago. So right now there's a big technology refresh going through, and about 80% of the work that we're doing is new systems. The other 20% are new airports or airports that are expanding and growing and need weather monitoring to support their flight operations. I've come across two airports that have new identifiers, and both of those were not in the U.S. They were in the Bahamas and then another country. So new airports are coming online all the time, but me personally, I've only come across two, and they were not U.S. projects.
Now, as far as people accessing the information, normal weather reporting, or is it separate going through MesoTech applications?
Great question. Normal weather reporting, same as any other AWAS. You have the main dissemination methods, your VHF radio as you're flying in or on the ground trying to get the weather. You have your phone line you can dial in on. You have the dissemination network that the FAA owns and manages. That's what feeds it to Garmin, ForeFlight, all the avionics platforms, and also aviationweather.gov and all the other online sources that the FAA disseminates their certified weather observations. At MesoTech, we've added an additional reporting capability on what we call AWAS Live. It's a web app included free with all of our systems, no fees for pilots. It's kind of our carrot to get airports to consider our solution over other options, but that web app was developed to give pilots real-time insights. All the online dissemination methods have a little bit of a lag, usually about 20 minutes or hourly METARs. AWAS Live will be feeding direct live advisory weather to the pilots so that they can keep better tabs on if the fog's moving in or moving out, and have a little bit more accuracy on the timeliness of their weather monitoring. We've also continued to develop new features and capabilities on AWAS Live, so it's not a set product. As pilots are using it, we're getting feedback, building out new options, new menus, new views. It's a living, breathing web app that continues to get new options and data points for pilots pretty much monthly. We're rolling out new features.
Okay, great. Now, I guess with most fully running airports, you've got people there running things. For the smaller ones, is this an automated enough where they can just set it, and then if there's an issue, have to go out and do that?
Yep. So it's fully automated. Run 24/7, broadcasting automated reports at smaller airports. Airport managers or ops staff can go in and put in voice to NOTAMs pretty easily. They can call in, do it remotely or on site. At larger airports, we do have quite a few airports, like here at Lakeland Linder, we have the weather equipment here on site. While we're at Sun and Fun, we're feeding pilots weather data for their the operations here at the flight show, but also the pilots coming in and going out. But at Lakeland, they have an air traffic control tower with observers. Those air traffic controllers, the certified weather observers up in the tower, they're taking our AWOS data, confirming it visually and with other resources, and then disseminating it through the ATIS broadcast. So there's multiple ways that this weather data is getting ingested. The most common use case is an automated broadcast, though, that airport manager, the system is out in the field broadcasting 24/7. Usually there's no issues, and if there are, we have certified techs that come out and maintain these systems. It's good to note that these are federally regulated systems. There's a lot of federal regulations that guide AWOS, specifically technically how they to what standard they broadcast, collect the data, and the algorithms that they use, but also on the maintenance side of things. So all certified AWOSs throughout the country adhere to a triennial maintenance schedule. They have to get inspected 3 times a year, 1 time a year with the FAA present to confirm and certify that the AWOS is reporting accurately. So these systems are robust, they're monitored, and they're a great flight safety tool that pilots can trust.
I suspect that depending upon the location, it could be such that the only data you're going to get from it is radio, because you may be too far out for an internet connection to pass data back and forth. Does that sound?
No, most sites have internet connection. Internet reliability is pretty solid throughout at least continental U.S. right now. If the airport, for whatever reason, doesn't have an existing internet connection, we do offer options, cell modems, even satellite options. So there's plenty of options to get the internet data on there. We need it. It's a requirement for our system. We use our remote monitoring and maintenance capabilities through IP. So all of our systems are connected to the internet securely, and we use that data connection to monitor our fleet throughout the world. And we also use that internet connection to do remote monitoring and maintenance. We're monitoring our fleet 24/7, and if there's any outages, we go in, address it, see if it's something that can be resolved remotely before the airport even knows about it. And if it is something that needs to have hands-on maintenance, we reach out to the airport and the maintainer to make sure that they have the intel they need to hopefully do a one-trip resolution. The standard model for AWOS repair has always been, that your AWOS maintainer has to be a certified technician of record, kind of like an aircraft mechanic. You get certified on a specific AWOS system, and only those FAA certified technicians can work on the AWOS. Those technicians go out, inspect the system, confirm, it's the visibility sensor. I got to come back when I get the part and get it back online. Our goal is to hopefully reduce that first trip, remotely diagnose what's happening so that technician can come on site with the right tools, the right sensors or replacements or parts, so that they can hopefully repair it in one trip and make that impact to the airport as seamless as possible and minimal as possible.
Okay, great. And I think we've talked about webcams on site, so you can verify what it looks like to what the information is showing. And I guess with those same webcams, you potentially could point it at your equipment to inspect, somebody's built a nest in your equipment.
Very good observation, yeah. Bird mitigation is a common thing with AWOS. Birds tend to be one of the number one service calls that we get. We do have an option to have a camera mounted at the wind sensor. Typically birds will nest either in the wind sensor or the rain gauge, sometimes on our visibility sensor, but those are the two most common culprits. The wind sensor is hard to get a camera view because it's the highest piece of equipment on the sensor suite. With that said, it's something that we do monitor with our cameras as much as we can. But yeah, that's a great question on using those cameras to help facilitate our remote monitoring of these systems. It's also a good way to verify that if we're getting accuracy issue, someone's reporting the visibility sensor or the ceilometer looks like it might be reporting off. We can use that weather camera to visually confirm, oh, that does look like it might be reporting off, or no, there's a pretty clear fog deck about 20 feet above the visibility sensor, it's not picking it up. So that's a great reason to have a weather camera integrated into an AWOS system or a supplementary advisory data point that pilots can use to confirm that the automated data coming out reflects what the real conditions are. A visibility sensor, most sensors are gathering a football-sized reading of what the current visibility is right at the visibility sensor height. And if you have a fog layer 20 feet above that sensor, it's not going to pick it up. So that's where a weather camera comes in. You can kind of see where things are moving. It's not 100% accurate. It's not certified weather you can operate off of. You have to go off of the certified weather observation. But any advisory data that pilots can get just helps add to flight safety and flight planning and operations.
I'm going to focus a little bit on the camera for a couple minutes here. So is the camera automatically scanning, or can it be manually controlled? Say, hey, I want to look at this edge of the runway.
Yeah. So the way our camera is set up, our standard option is a 180-degree panoramic view. We try and get a view of the runway and a marker at least a mile away, preferably 2 or 3 miles. That way you can get a visual reference of visibility. That camera, on our display on our web app, it has a zoom function to where you can zoom in. It's a high quality image, so you can zoom in and look at a specific area and see, if you want to look at here at Lakeland, our camera points at the air traffic control tower that's about a mile away. You can zoom in on the air traffic control tower and see, what the visibility actually is on that little dot on the main view. It's pretty small on the main view, but with that zoom feature, you can kind of zoom in on it and see.
Now, on a clear, sunny day, I'm guessing it's a regular camera, but is there other capabilities like low light or infrared for either night or foggy conditions?
Yeah, our camera doesn't have infrared or night vision, but it's a great low light capability camera. Here at Lakeland, you can go on at night and look, and you can see clouds, you can see plane activity, you can see the ground, you can see some AWAS equipment in front of the sensor the way that we have it mounted. 24/7, it still gives enough data to infer, what's going on the airfield. We have looked into infrared or night vision or other options as needed, but so far it hasn't been needed at our airports.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to take a look at some of the equipment momentarily, but right now.
All right, so here's our web app. This is coming from the AWAS here at the airfield at Lakeland Linder. You can see this is real-time weather. It's all configurable. Pilots can change their wind averaging. If we sit here a second, you'll see an update. You'll see the wind change there on the compass. So if it is, a day where conditions are changing rapidly, maybe fog is lifting, you can monitor this and see how it's changing and not wait for the published METAR to come through your ForeFlight or the Aviation Weather Network. This is advisory only because it's not coming from the FAA's network. So keep that in mind. This is advisory data, but it's supplemental that pilots can use to help them better gauge when to take off and when to plan their flight operations.
And at what point does that data flow into the FAA database, or does it?
It flows in at the same time, but the FAA's database, they aggregate so much data that I think that's why they have to throttle it a little bit.
Okay,
Exactly. And it depends on, they're aggregating data from ASOS, AWAS, all sorts of different weather systems. And I think that the 20-minute and hourly METARs are the way to get that. I don't know. I don't manage that program, but I wouldn't be surprised if that changes sometime in the near future. Technology is getting better, data storage is getting better and cheaper, so in the next few years, no promises, but we may see that change from the FAA side. But in the meantime, you have any MesoTech system has our web app free for pilots. No charge for pilots, it's just our incentive for airports to choose our technology over some other options.
And this is both iOS and Android?
Yep, it's a web app, so you just type in klal.awas.live and you'll get there.
Okay, so is this on a app or on a website?
It's a website. It's a web app. So we used to have an app that we managed. We found it easier just to have a web app. It's much easier to manage in the long term and easier for pilots to access. So as long as you have internet access, you can get on any MesoTech Systems AWAS Live page. Here at Lakeland, we also have the weather camera. We spoke about this briefly earlier, but this is an additional advisory weather camera. It does feed the FAA's weather camera network too. So if you're not familiar, the FAA has a weather camera network that's growing rapidly. It came out of Alaska, and it's slowly working its way down here. But we're the first dot on the map in Florida, and we'll probably have more coming in soon. But the weather camera is a great visual reference to confirm what's coming out of the METAR. is what actually is happening. As we talked about earlier, sometimes the way that these sensors collect the data, there may be a small discrepancy on what the METAR says and what the visual OBS is. There's other handy features I won't get to in the weeds. There's local weather. This is meant for non-aviators. It converts everything to Fahrenheit and miles per hour. A lot of like police stations and firehouses, that kind of thing, they love this display. You can use it too, you know, if you have an airport in your backyard, 10 miles down the road, it's a good thing to bookmark to see what's happening with the weather. We also have nearby OBS. Pilots love this. It gives you a quick reference on if you're flying out where things are VFR, IFR at a quick glance. And if you see a airport, I think that's Bartow, I'm not sure. If you're flying there, you can get the METAR. This is coming from the FAA's network, so it's not the real time, but it's just another tool on our web app. And then the last thing here is that camera page I talked about earlier. This page will have other features like like a time lapse, so you can see how things are changing. The zoom feature I talked about, so here we can zoom in on that air traffic control tower about a mile out and see what's happening out there. So let's pan up to the system itself. This is what feeds the weather data to the FAA, all of the other dissemination sources. Most AWOS have about 6 or 7 sensors. It all depends on the reporting level that the airport needs and chooses. Each sensor is dedicated to its own specific parameter. That's part of what makes these systems so robust. A lot of these sensors that you can get for, you know, mounting on your house, everything's kind of combined, which works fine if you don't need, you know, reporting accuracy to the level and standard that the FAA National Weather Service requires. But they require, you know, a wind sensor mounted at 30 feet. So obviously this is not the size that it is deployed in the field. And you know, you need your altimeter down about 5-10 feet above runway level. So having that separation between sensors is vital, and that's why you see a lot of these systems having that 30-foot wind tower. They also need clear space around it so you don't get wind you know, bouncing off a tree or a building, affecting the wind patterns there.
Now, is that high voltage sensor, or is that just a capacitor?
Yeah, that's just high. That's, you know, our model is not high voltage. That's just what it looks like in real life. High voltage because it's this is a rain gauge and it's heated. The heaters in there are high voltage. Same with the ceilometer, the wind sensor, this visibility sensor. A lot of our equipment, even the Mars, that's where the temp RH sensor is. A lot of these sensors have features and blowers and heaters built in to keep them reporting even if it's below 35 degrees Celsius. They work you know, from Antarctica to Alaska to you know, Afghanistan. We have systems deployed around the world, and they need to report in whatever weather conditions that they encounter. Any questions about the equipment itself?
I don't know enough to
I could point to each one. That's the wind sensor, and then that's the visibility sensor. Temp RH sensor with, it's called a Mars. That's just make sure that the temperature and humidity is not a bubble. There's a fan in there that makes sure it's always getting new fresh air, and it keeps it shaded. This is a pressure port. There's 2 altimeter barometers in here as redundancy, and then that's the rain gauge. Ceilometer that gives you your ceiling, and then lightning sensor that can detect lightning about 250 nautical miles out. That's really helpful, obviously, for flight planning, but a lot of ground crews, ground activity fueling, knowing if there's lightning in the area is always good. Not shown here is an ice sensor. That's the same ice sensor that most commercial jets have. They have 2 of them on board. So there's a lot of technology that carries over through, you know, surface level reporting to, you know, reporting on the aircraft itself in large, you know, commercial aircraft and jets and that kind of thing.
Is there any other things that we just barely touched on or missed that you'd like to talk about?
There's a lot. AWOS is a deep dive. You could, you know, spend your life working on AWOS and meteorological equipment and never be, you know everything. The one thing that I would say for your audience is if you don't have an AWOS, talk to your airport manager or staff and see what options are available. There's federal funding out there. Depending on your airport category, you may be eligible. And an airport that's eligible can get one installed for relatively cheap. when it comes to the matching side. It's about 5% that the airport will pay and the federal government will cover the rest. So there's a lot of great funding options out there, and if you're interested in flying in to an airport that you frequent that doesn't have an AWOS, just ask. You never know, that it might be on their radar, but the more pilots that keep asking about it, the more likely it is to get on their plan to get one installed. The other thing I would say is there's options out there. We entered the market in 2021, and there's a lot of old systems out there, and I've noticed that there's kind of an undertone of pilots and airport managers being frustrated with AWOS due to the reliability, mostly because there's a lot of old systems out there. If your system's old, you're probably eligible for the same funding. There's new options, new technology in the market, especially as vendors like us enter and bring new capabilities, and we're refreshing not only the sensor suite but also the technology behind it to help make these systems reliable, user-friendly, and maintainable for the long term. So if you've written off AWOS, if you're frustrated with AWOS, take another look, see what's out there. There's a lot of options in the market, and it may be easier and cheaper than you think it is to get one installed.
And I can really see this as useful for those areas where weather has a tendency to change and be more volatile. Okay, you're in Mojave Desert. Okay, it's always hot and clear. But you come down to Florida or something like that. Oh, it's raining, and 20 minutes later it's not. So is there a good way for a potential airport owner to say, this is our normal weather conditions and we want to be able to report them sooner rather than later, that would help them decide, yes, this is the right tool for them?
Not really. I'd say every airport probably could benefit from FAA certified AWOS. Really, the deciding factor for the FAA whether or not to fund it is the operations. What kind of flights are flying in? Do they have Part 135, 95, obviously 121? That's a whole different story. But it all comes back to flight operations and what the weather reporting requirements are for those flight operations, and also volume. So if you're a smaller GA airport but you're a reliever for a different airport, that usually will put you on it's called the NIPIUS. Those are AIP eligible airports. And as airports grow, you may actually fall into another category, and that's where other technologies that are coming on board, like ADS-B tracking, and there's a lot of new tech coming on board, and it's helping airports really figure out where they land on the priority list of specifically federal funding and grant options. So we're getting in the weeds of airport management. I know you have a lot of pilots that are listening to this, but it's always good to stay connected to the airport. Bend someone's ear if you can. Ask about, are we eligible for NIPIUS? When was the last time we checked? As airports scale and grow, and as areas scale and grow, you get more people moving to a specific area. I'm from California. There's a lot of people moving from California to areas like Tennessee, Florida, Texas. I know some of those areas are growing rapidly, and some of those airports are growing rapidly as a result. So as population changes around the country and air traffic changes, airports may qualify for something that they may not have qualified for 5 years ago. So,
great.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of information.
I got in the weeds.
No, that's all right. And hopefully everybody can have a chance to come by and see MesoTech here at the Innovation Showcase. Are you displaying at any other trade shows in the future?
Yeah, obviously we sell to airports. We don't sell to pilots. So we frequent a lot of trade shows and conferences that airport managers attend. And also airport consultants, all the, Mead and Hunt, all the big guys, they're always there. So that's our usual track, is we're at airport focused events. This is a new one for us. It's interesting and fun to get to interact with the end users, the pilots using our system, and get feedback on who the actual pilots using our system day in and day out, and features they want to see. Because at the end of the day, our customer is airports, airport managers, airport ops staff, and consultants that are, bringing these projects to life and helping airports figure out what kind of infrastructure they need and getting the procurement done. So us getting to interact with all these pilots here has been awesome. We've gotten so much good feedback about new features, ideas, and even airports that they're flying in and out of, and they're taking, some of what we're talking about back to their airports to see what kind of new technology they can get on the airfield.
Say, I want this.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Tanner, for speaking with us. This is Brian Purdy with the Florida Aviation Network, live and in clear from Sun and Fun Aerospace Expo 2025 and the Innovation Showcase. Good day. Okay, so we'll just...